King Charles has always been a man caught between duty and desire, between the crown he inherited and the family he struggles to hold together. For years, he has watched his younger son drift further away, watched the rift between Harry and the institution grow wider with every interview, every documentary, every public betrayal. But now, as his health deteriorates and time grows precious, Charles has made a decision that changes everything. Sources close to the palace reveal that the king has issued what insiders are calling his deathbed decree. One final condition for Harry's return to the royal fold. One non-negotiable demand that must be met before reconciliation can even begin. And at the centre of that condition sits the one thing Harry cannot control. Meghan, what did Charles demand? And why is this condition something Meghan can never, will never accept? According to those familiar with the private conversations happening behind palace walls, Charles has drawn a line in the sand. He has made it clear that Harry's path back to the family requires a sacrifice that would dismantle everything the Sussexes have built in California. This is not about apologies. This is not about public statements or damage control. This is about power, control, and the one question that has haunted the royal family since the day Harry and Meghan walked away. Who decides Harry's future? The king or his wife? To understand why Charles issued this decree, you need to go back to the beginning of Harry's relationship with Meghan. Long before the wedding, long before the departure, there were warnings. Quiet conversations behind closed doors where senior royals expressed concerns that were never made public. Sources say these concerns were not about Meghan's background or her American roots. They were about something far more fundamental, her understanding of what royal life actually requires. People close to the palace claim that from the earliest days, there were advisors who watched Meghan's interactions with staff, her approach to protocol, her response to guidance, and what they saw troubled them. This was not a woman learning to navigate a new world. This was a woman who believed she already knew better. Insiders suggest that early meetings between Meghan and palace staff were marked by tension. Suggestions were dismissed. Protocols were questioned. Traditions were treated as obstacles rather than foundations. Word from those who witnessed these early interactions claims that Meghan approached the royal family not as an institution to join, but as a platform to reshape. And that approach, sources say, set off alarm bells that would eventually prove prophetic. Behind the scenes, key figures reportedly tried to bridge the gap. The late Queen Elizabeth herself is said to have offered private guidance, gentle corrections wrapped in warmth and wisdom. But, according to palace insiders, those efforts met resistance. Meghan was not interested in becoming part of the machine. She wanted the machine to adapt to her. And that fundamental disconnect, sources claim, is what Charles saw developing in real time. He watched his son fall deeper in love with a woman who would never truly bow to the crown. He saw the inevitable collision coming. And he did nothing to stop it because he believed, perhaps naively, that love would eventually bend to duty. This is where the story shifts from observation to action. So what happened that turned a concerned father into a king willing to issue an ultimatum? The turning point came not in one dramatic moment, but through a series of escalating betrayals that sources say left Charles feeling both hurt and furious. The Oprah interview, the Netflix documentary, the memoir, each revelation felt like another knife in the institution's back. But here's what most people don't know. According to insiders close to Charles, the public attacks were not what cut deepest. It was the private conversations that never happened. The phone calls Harry did not make. The moments when reconciliation was possible, but Meghan reportedly intervened. Those close to the king claim there were multiple instances where Harry reached out, moments when he seemed ready to rebuild bridges. But sources suggest these attempts were always conditional, always filtered through Meghan's approval, always structured in ways that required the palace to concede first. And each time Charles tried to meet his son halfway, he allegedly discovered that halfway was never enough. Word from royal circles suggests that Charles began to see a pattern. Harry would express desire for reconciliation. Plans would be made, and then, at the last moment, demands would escalate or conditions would change. People familiar with these failed attempts claim that palace staff started documenting the pattern. They noted how Harry's language would shift after conversations with Meghan, how his positions would harden, how compromise became impossible once she weighed in. This was not jealousy, this was recognition. Charles realised that his son was no longer making decisions independently, and that realisation, insiders say, is what led to the decree. The king understood that any path forward required addressing the source of the deadlock, not Harry's anger, but Meghan's control. As word of Charles's condition began spreading through royal circles, reactions divided along predictable lines. Want to know how the palace really feels about Charles's ultimatum? Inside Buckingham Palace, sources say there is overwhelming support for the king's stance. Senior advisors reportedly view the decree as long overdue, a necessary line drawn after years of watching Harry be manipulated. These are the voices arguing that the monarchy cannot negotiate with someone who uses private family conversations as public currency. They point to every leaked detail, every calculated revelation, every strategic interview as evidence that Meghan cannot be trusted with royal proximity. And they believe Charles's condition is the only way to protect the institution from further damage. But not everyone in the family agrees. Princess Anne, according to insiders, has expressed private concerns that the decree is too harsh, that it risks losing Harry permanently. Sources claim she has argued that family should come before conditions, that Charles is allowing his anger at Meghan to destroy his relationship with his son. Yet even Anne reportedly acknowledges that reconciliation under current circumstances is impossible. She simply wishes the ultimatum had been framed differently. And then there is Prince William. Word from those close to the Prince of Wales suggests he is firmly, absolutely supportive of his father's position. Insiders claim William has gone even further, privately telling Charles that the condition is not strict enough. William reportedly believes that Meghan should be permanently barred from any royal events, that her presence is toxic to the institution, and that Harry's return should require not just separation from her influence, but public acknowledgement of the damage she caused. Sources say William sees this as the moment to finally force Harry to choose the family that raised him or the wife who isolated him. But here's what most people don't know. What is the actual condition Charles has set? The whispers emerging from palace insiders suggest the decree is far more comprehensive than anyone publicly acknowledges. The first element, according to sources, is geographical. Charles has allegedly made it clear that any reconciliation requires Harry to return to British soil permanently, not for visits, not for ceremonies, but as a resident subject to the same expectations and protocols as other working royals. This means leaving California, leaving the Montecito mansion, leaving the Hollywood dreams and the American independence. It means coming home under the Crown's terms, not Harry's preferences. The second element cuts even deeper. Word from those familiar with the decree suggests Charles has demanded that Harry accept a formal role within the royal household, complete with duties assigned by the king and oversight from senior palace staff. This would strip away the independence Harry fought so hard to achieve. He would answer to schedules he did not create, attend events he did not choose, and live under the scrutiny he spent years escaping. But it is the third element that makes the condition impossible for Meghan. According to multiple sources, Charles has allegedly required that Meghan have no formal role, no platform, no public presence connected to the royal family. She would be Harry's wife in title, but invisible in practice. No joint appearances, no charitable foundations bearing both their names, no interviews or projects where she speaks as a member of the royal family. In essence, sources claim Charles is demanding that Meghan disappear from the royal narrative entirely. And the fourth whisper is the most devastating. Insiders suggest that Charles has made it clear that any future relationship between the Sussexes and the royal family would be subject to renewed evaluation if Meghan's behaviour or public statements cross palace-defined boundaries. This creates a permanent sword hanging over Harry's head. One wrong move from Meghan and the door slams shut forever. To understand how this decree was shaped, you need to understand the people whispering in Charles's ear. So who convinced the king that an ultimatum was the only path forward? Two figures emerge as the primary architects of this hardline position. The first is Sir Clive Alderton, Charles's most trusted advisor and private secretary. Sources describe Alderton as a strategic thinker who has watched the Sussex situation unfold with growing alarm. Insiders claim he was among the first to recognise that Meghan's influence over Harry was not temporary rebellion, but permanent realignment. Alderton reportedly compiled extensive documentation of every public statement, every breach of protocol, every leaked conversation that could be traced back to the Sussexes. And he presented this evidence to Charles with a simple argument, according to those familiar with their conversations. The institution cannot survive if every private moment becomes public fodder. Reconciliation without conditions would signal that betrayal carries no consequences, and Harry will never break free of Meghan's influence unless forced to choose between her and his family. Word from palace circles suggests Alderton crafted the specific language of the decree, ensuring it was both comprehensive and unambiguous. No room for interpretation, no space for negotiation. The second architect is someone whose involvement is whispered about but rarely confirmed, Queen Camilla. Sources claim that Camilla, who spent years being vilified and slowly rebuilding her reputation, has zero tolerance for watching Meghan do to Charles what Diana's memory did to her. Insiders suggest Camilla has privately encouraged Charles to draw the hardest possible line, arguing that any softness will be exploited. People close to Camilla reportedly say she views Meghan as a calculated manipulator who saw the royal family as a stepping stone rather than a commitment. And she has allegedly told Charles that his legacy depends on protecting the institution from further Sussex damage, even if it means losing his son permanently. What makes this situation truly dangerous is not what Charles has demanded publicly. It is what he knows privately. Want to know what the palace has documented that could destroy the Sussexes completely? According to sources close to the king's inner circle, there exists a comprehensive file of evidence that goes far beyond public knowledge. This is not speculation, this is documentation. Insiders claim the file includes financial records showing exactly how much money the Sussexes have cost the royal family in security, legal fees and damage control. Communication showing times when Harry was offered reconciliation, but Meghan allegedly pushed back. Testimony from former palace staff detailing interactions that paint a very different picture than the narrative Meghan presents publicly. And most damaging of all, according to sources, the file contains evidence of coordination between the Sussexes and media outlets, suggesting that supposedly private revelations were actually strategic leaks designed for maximum impact. Word from those who have seen portions of this documentation claims it would fundamentally alter public perception of the Sussex story. It would shift the narrative from victims escaping toxic institution to calculated operators exploiting family tragedy for profit and platform. But Charles has not released this evidence. Sources say he is holding it as leverage, as insurance, as the ultimate weapon if the Sussexes continue their public attacks. And this creates a terrifying dynamic for Harry and Meghan. They know the palace has receipts. They know their version of events can be contradicted with documentation. They know that one more betrayal could trigger the release of information that destroys their carefully constructed image. And Meghan knows that Charles's decree is not just about control, it is about neutralisation. If she cannot speak as a royal, cannot build platforms tied to royal connection, cannot leverage the Sussex title for commercial gain, then her entire post-royal strategy collapses. And now we reach the final moment, the point where everything converges into an impossible choice. How does this end when neither side can afford to back down? Harry stands trapped between two worlds that cannot coexist. His father has issued a decree that would require abandoning everything he and Meghan built in California. His wife has built an identity that depends on maintaining independence from the institution that raised him. And the clock is ticking on his father's health, adding urgency to a decision that requires choosing between blood and marriage. Sources close to Harry suggest he is tormented by the impossible mathematics of his situation. Return to England under Charles's conditions, and he loses Meghan, either through divorce or through the slow poison of resentment from a wife forced into invisibility. Refuse the conditions, and he loses his father, his family, his connection to the only identity he knew for 3 decades. Those familiar with Harry's state of mind claim he is exploring impossible compromises, searching for middle ground that does not exist. But Meghan has reportedly made her position clear. According to insiders, she views Charles's decree as exactly what it is, an attempt to erase her from the royal narrative and strip away the platform she has spent years building. And she has allegedly told Harry that accepting those conditions would mean admitting she was wrong about everything, that the institution was right to reject her, that their entire California life was a mistake. Sources say she will not bend, she will not disappear, she will not accept being written out of the story, because in the end, every kingdom needs more than subjects. It needs stories. And Meghan has built her entire post-royal existence on controlling the Sussex narrative. What Charles knows, what William knows, what the palace understands is that this decree will likely result in permanent estrangement. Harry will not leave Meghan. Meghan will not accept invisibility. And Charles's time to resolve this grows shorter every day. The condition has been set, the line has been drawn, and the price of crossing back is more than the Sussexes can afford to pay. Because when a king issues a deathbed decree, he is not negotiating. He is deciding who belongs in the kingdom and who remains forever outside the walls. And Harry chose his exile the day he chose his wife. Subscribe to Royal Unfiltered for more such news. Thanks for watching.